We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Hello and welcome to Angry Beaver Radio here on truthfrequencyradio.com, broadcasting live from the globalist occupied country formerly known as Canada and is now known as Canadistan. And we're here with my co-host Mark. How's it going, Mark?
I'm very good, and you?
Pretty good. And we're here. We've got two guests on the line. We've got Mr. Vinny Eastwood from the Vinny Eastwood Show. And we also have Susanne Posel from Occupy Corporatism and the USindependent.com.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Hey, and by the way, the Canadian pronunciation, like each of the three North American Union countries is going to be still called the USA. It's just going to be pronounced different. So the United States of America is just going to be pronounced the USA. The United States of Mexico is going to be pronounced the USA. And the United States of Canada is going to be called the USA.
No dude
sounds
about
like
it.
a good one, eh?
No dude about it.
I'm sorry. I always kind of like to start off a broadcast with an incredibly terrible joke that just doesn't go anywhere. Okay.
I'd never heard of that one before, I gotta say. It was original. So anyways, we have Vinny here. What's your website, Vinny? Is it Vinny Eastwood?
It's the VinnyEastwoodShow.com, Vinny with a Y, because it's the most important question at Eastwood isn't go ahead, make my news. And I also have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Mr. News Guerrilla Media, or if you just search Vinny Eastwood with a Y on YouTube, it should take you there as well. And it's the most popular YouTube channel for news in New Zealand, like history. It's even more popular than any of the mainstream media YouTube channels that they've got over here. Doubly so, in fact.
So you're basically one of the the head New Zealand alternative media feeds over there, I would assume. And I've listened to your show for at least a couple of years, it seems. Like I've noticed you around. Are you still broadcasting over on American Freedom Radio? Well, we seem to have lost Vinny. Suzanne still there?
I am still here.
You're still there. And we lost Mark's offline.
Oh, how crazy.
Wow.
Well, it's just you and me, kid.
I guess it's just... Okay, we've got Vinny back.
All right. Apparently everybody was dropping off there. So what do we start that again? What were you asking me?
I was asking you if you still broadcast over on American Freedom Radio, and what times do you broadcast at?
Well, nobody broadcasts on American Freedom Radio because American Freedom Radio has been dead for 3, 4, 5 months or some crap. Oh. Yeah, I've been doing it independent since then. Many networks offered me slots and what have you. I just I don't want to kind of leave American Freedom Radio, even if it's not even there. And apparently it might be back at some point. We were told it might be back in November, then we were told December, and now we're being told March. And so it might be in touch by about 2020. In which case I'll go back onto being on American Freedom Radio. But in the meantime. It's all being uploaded now. Instead of doing a 2-hour show with commercials, which winds up being about maybe an hour and a half of content per day, it's now a 3-hour show commercial free. So it's 3 hours of content per day, and that's being uploaded to my website on a pretty much consistent daily basis. And traffic to the website's actually increased since I increased the length of my show, which is good to know that people actually do want to hear more from my guests and whatnot than they did before.
Right. Now, I had a question. I want to know because you're from there. I don't know if you'll know it or not, but here in Canada, we're basically under the British Crown. And I think Australia is, and I had no idea if New Zealand was.
Well, of course.
Okay, so they're all basic British Crown. Now, it was kind of like a two-part question. What does the banking system operate like? How does that work over there? Because here in Canada, we have a Bank of Canada. It's a national bank, but it no longer creates the money. And now we're just borrowing from private banks at compound interest, going into a spiraling economic death spiral down the tubes because of compound interest. Meanwhile, we used to just create our own money at our own bank and borrow it at a very low interest rate, non-compounded.
Yeah, same story. And right behind the front desk of the Reserve Bank of New Zealand in Wellington, which is right across the road from the beehive, which is a Masonic symbol for the perfect society, a queen running everything, and incidentally, the queen still runs us, allegedly. There is a Rothschild shield. Yeah, that's right. You walk right into the Reserve Bank, and it's just like, what's that behind the desk there? Oh, that's a giant red shield. And what is that supposed to symbolize? Well, it's the crest of the Rothschild family. Wait, hold on a second. Are you saying that they own this bank? Yeah, pretty much. And are you saying that because they own the banking system and control the money supply in this country, that they pretty much own and run this country? Well, yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. You can't make this stuff up. It's the same deal everywhere you go. I mean, apart from if you went to North Korea or Iran, which are the only two countries yet without a Rothschild-controlled central bank, as I understand it. Incidentally, they're the axis of evil, because, if obviously, if you don't have a ruthless criminal bankster-controlled central bank that issues the public currency and then charges interest on it that they make out of thin air, then that people must be evil, just bad.
Right, so it sounds like you've got the same kind of deal going on. Now, do you guys have like a New Zealand national bank? Or is there like an Australian national bank?
Reserve Bank of New Zealand, as I said before, if you were listening.
So it's more like the Federal Reserve masquerading as a...
well, every single privately owned central bank winds up calling itself the such and such Reserve Bank. Right, it'll be the Australian Reserve Bank, Canadian Reserve Bank, or a British Reserve Bank, or a New Zealand Reserve Bank, or something along those lines, or the Federal Reserve, etc.
Right.
Nobody ever gifted the bankers with a remarkably large quantity of creativity, although they are credited with much scumbaggery.
Yeah, speaking of the scumbaggery, the recent thing I heard was with the Bitcoin, one of the massive Bitcoin operations shut down, and people were going there trying to get their money. They had protest signs, where's our money? And we were talking about this, like this digital cryptocurrency is nothing new. It's just like the digital banking currency, but it's this new cryptocurrency is gobbling up the fake, bank currency and the paper money, and then it basically disappears. But
it's not working out too well for anybody. I've had so many of my listeners and so on, suggest that I stop using PayPal and start using Bitcoin. And I'm like, well, bro, I've been using PayPal for quite a long time. Sure, it might be scumbaggery involved with the New World Order of some description or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's incredibly functional and it allows people to donate to me so I can actually keep my show on the air, and it's been working relatively well. Until 2012 came around or something like that, and I was getting so much donations and doing so much work that I was just exhausted, couldn't be bothered cooking or anything like that, and was just winding up going out and getting takeaways pretty much every other night, and buying it for my wife as well. And we both gained a shockingly large amount of weight, like 10 kilos in a month or something, and I just sat back and I realized, oh my god, not only am I gaining weight and eating really unhealthy stuff, I don't eat fast food no more because of that incident actually, but also I'm spending my donation money on it, right? And I actually felt really guilty, and I was like, okay, well, I need to be taught a lesson. So this is about the only time when I actually ever pray for something, is if I want something bad to happen, because I know that at least those prayers get answered. So I got down on my Are we able to swear on this broadcast, by the way? No?
I'm not sure. I think it might go out on an FM somewhere, so I play it safe.
Okay. Well, I got down on my knees and go, Jesus, please frack up my life. Send me some pain, some suffering, some hardship, and some economic strife, and teach me a lesson for using people's donations for nefarious means, like feeding myself, and the the very next day, my PayPal account gets cancelled. So all the people that had subscribed to me through PayPal and were giving regular donations for like maybe 4 years or something, I had that puppy running, suddenly nothing was there. All right, I was like basically out in the cold with no money whatsoever. It was an incredibly stressful time in my life. And nowadays I'm actually in I wouldn't say a similar position, but getting there in terms of financial hardship. We just moved into a new place that has a spare bedroom. So if activists come to New Zealand, they've got a place to stay, free of charge and what have you. We'll put them up and we'll make them breakfast, etc. Pick them up from the airport if they want. Also got like a second computer here, which one of my listeners donated some money for, so I can teach people how to edit audio and video and what have you, so that they can go out and basically they'll know what I can do, and what I can do is I can cut together 3 documentaries in 3 nights. I've done that, right? It was pretty intense, but I've managed to do it. Other than that, I think the main kind of income stream, and this is the reason why I'm so grateful to my listenership, is from them. I don't really have any corporate sponsors. I don't have no advertisers giving me money or what have you. I mean, there's a few banners on the website there for people, but they don't give me any money. I actually just want to help them with their businesses and what have you. And I hope that because I'm so generous with my time and have been for like 6-7 years-ish, about 4 years I've been doing this, my radio show, that people will find it in their hearts to forgive my faults, forgive my, grandiose, self-promotion and what have you. By the way, there's nothing shameful about shameless self-promotion, technically. And donate, preferably regularly, because that way I don't really have to keep asking for donations all the time. And I keep making shows all the time, so I thought that would be nice. It's unlike any other radio platform that I've seen so far, because you take Red Ice or Veritas, where they'll give you some of their show for free, but you have to pay to get the rest. I just give everything to free and just hope that people appreciate that enough to give something.
Right. So you've been broadcasting 4 years now. Okay. Yeah. So that was on American Freedom Radio.
Yeah.
Right. Well, anyways, what else I want to talk about? We had was noticing this here. A friend of mine, they put out an article about children's aid harvesting for economic gain in Ontario. And this was put out by CanadianAwareness.org. And it goes into, the ins and outs of children's aid and the, Child Protective Services and these kind of folks. CPS, CAS, whatever the alphabet soup agency is, like the family courts. And they're basically kidnapping. They're snatching up people's kids left and right that don't deserve to have their their children taken, and they end up with their kids missing. I mean, recently we had there was a march here there must have been about 1,000 parents with empty strollers that did a march, and those strollers represented their missing children taken by the state. And I wondered, do you have these kinds of problems? Is it, prevalent there in New Zealand?
Oh, yeah. we protested outside a CYFS office, CYFS, Child, Youth and Family Services. I found it very interesting that they decided to name a childcare government agency after a venereal disease. Come on, you get in the CYFS system. It's like, bro, that doesn't sound appetizing. And sure enough, it's not that appetizing. We got recordings of a senior CYFS officer admitting that 10% of the people under his control are pedophiles, known pedophiles, and that 50% of the other social workers that are under his control have wet dreams about their clients' children. You know, real sick stuff going on down in this country, man. And the media won't touch it. They're too afraid. The people who speak out against it, I've interviewed a number of people who've been chucked in mental facilities because their child was being abused by a family who actually writes the child abuse legislation in this country. I'm talking about people with specific awards from the Crown and what have you, who have a high standing in society, who take children away to their mansion out in the hills, called, incidentally, they call it the Candy House, right out of frickin' Hansel and Gretel, so that they can be alone with people's children and abuse them and groom them for sex. This country's really, really rife with it. It's quite sick, but nobody wants to talk about it. All right, and fair enough. I don't want to talk about it. Nobody does. But here's the thing. If you don't want it to go on, if you don't want it to keep continuing, you have to talk about it. You don't really have much of a choice, do you? And so, you know, we went out to a protest at a Manurewa CYFS office, a little township here in New Zealand. 100-watt megaphone outside, myself, Philippa Cunningham, and Daniel Ryder, who's the person who actually got those recordings I told you about the CYFS officer admitting pedophiles work for him kind of thing. And we just gave him a bollocking, you know. And sure enough, none of them came out to speak to us. None of them answered for any of their crimes. And all they did was jump in their cars and then just go out the driveway, out the back, and then scurry away like the cockroaches that they are. And then we had about, I think that was quite a few months ago. It might have been like 5-6 months ago that we did that. And about a week or so ago, we get a message, or Philippa Cunningham, one of the ladies who was there with us, gets a message from one of the people at that CYFS office. Now, they were complaining, get this, they weren't complaining that we were exposing the pedophilia. They're not worried about that. They weren't complaining about the fact that they pay each and every person $5,000 per child that they wind up taking care of, even when there's no qualifications of childcare. This the CYFS homes and things like that. They didn't complain about the fact that we were exposing that methamphetamine and other illicit drugs were being shifted throughout their system. They didn't complain about us exposing legalized pedophilia and child kidnapping in this country. No. What she was really upset about was the fact that we said the words BS. You know what that means. And we didn't say BS. We said the actual word. And of course, now that I've said BS, everybody knows what it means. and so therefore it kind of voids it. It's kind of like saying the N-word. Everybody knows what the N-word means. So certain comedians, I think Louis C.K. says he really hates people who say the N-word because it makes you think of it. You may as well say it. But you got to love those FCC regulations, don't you? See, that was her complaint, though. All right. That was her freaking complaint.
She was complaining about using a swear word, but yeah. she had no problem with you exposing all the scumbaggery, as you would say, that they're involved in.
Yeah. Yes, I know we're a legalized pedophilia ring, but you shouldn't use such language.
Oh my God!
Frack these people. They're freaking scum. I mean, honestly. I'm not totally in favor of the death penalty, but scum like that, who operate with impunity, who steal and kill and destroy the lives of innocent children for the money, in my opinion, deserve death. No punishment comes close to being more justifiable, I think. Especially those who cover it up.
Well, I mean, I've seen all kinds of stories about in England, how it's the same problems going on there, and the pedophilia rings go right to the top. The same thing in the United States, the same thing in Canada. It's so, I mean, you're just confirming that this is rampant throughout the world, really, this problem. And I know, yeah, you're right, people don't like to hear about this kind of stuff, but especially...
They call you crazy, they switch off, they never talk to you again kind of thing. In fact, we had a protest against our mayor, Len Brown, and he's kind of corrupt and was philandering around for like 2 years behind the public's back. And of course, the media didn't expose it until 3 days after he was elected to a position which you can't be unelected from without a change of legislation, mind you. Thank you, media, for being on the ball. They're just freaking useless scum in this country. But after the protest, I was talking with some of the protest leaders, and I helped to organise and got the sound gear and everything down there for them and made their protest videos, etc. Now, me and one other guy in our group of, I think maybe 5 young guys who were kind of doing the protest thing, knew about this global pedophile ring, and I was trying to explain it very, very lightly to these people. Just basically imagine for a moment that there is a global pedophile ring that operates within the government and involves the highest people in society. All right. And I noticed the color and the energy drain from the eyes and the faces of those around me. Apart from this other one guy who knows about it, who was starting to back me up and go, "Yeah, man, there absolutely is," and so on and so forth, and blah 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 blah. And then I tapped him on the shoulder after a minute or so, after I noticed that these guys weren't getting it, and I said to him, "Bro, we've got to stop talking about this, okay? These guys aren't ready for it. They're not ready for it. I think you kind of have to lose your faith in society before you're ready to hear the truth about it." And I think that's the reason why a lot of truthers are people who have been arrested without charge or held without charge or had their children kidnapped for no good reason. You really don't have much of a problem with the New World Order until it comes knocking at your door. And the realization dawns on you that there's 2 types of people in the world, as Mark Passio said: those who want to be left alone, and those who won't leave you alone. And I think that's the thing that we're kind of trying to deal with now, is realizing that these people won't leave us alone, and trying to figure out how to disarm them and expose them and hopefully get rid of them and actually bring about a system that doesn't freaking screw everybody round wholesale and has no interest in the common good.
Right. Well, that's very interesting. Now, I've got this here. Interesting topic of chemtrails discussed at a recent United Nations global warming session. And so for all these years, we're all a bunch of tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists. And now, as years have gone by, they've slowly eased it out into the public forum. And eventually, it will become common knowledge that yes, they're spraying the skies, and they'll be teaching the children that, in their books and in their literature, that it's normal. This is just normal activity they're doing to fight climate change. That's what the UN claims. That's what it says on the Environment Canada website and their documents. And I don't know have you guys ever heard of this term, solar radiation management? SRM?
I haven't.
Well, that's...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, David Keith and Bill Gates dumps a lot of money his way so he can continue geoengineering the planet. But yeah, that's what they're doing with the aluminum in the chemtrails. It's reflective. It's supposed to be reflecting the heat and the sunlight back out into space so that it doesn't warm the planet.
So could we blame the deep freeze on Bill Gates?
Well, when someone says to you climate change is man-made, you can say yes it is. Nod your head. That will disarm them because they're expecting you to say no it's not. It absolutely is. Men got into the planes. Men attached the apparatus to the planes. Men poured the mixture into the machine that would mix everything up, and then when the jet or the airplane or aircraft, whatever, goes up into the sky, and they press the little button, a man made the software to control the computer system that allows the particulates to come out in the jet stream. So absolutely, climate change is man-made. It's just not the way you think it is.
Yeah. In fact, I had somebody arguing with me. It's of my opinion that climate change activists are basically just members of a cult. You know, a cult is like an extreme veneration for a certain personal thing, right? And I think this actually kind of gets into it. And we've been assaulted by climate change activists wearing polar bear outfits. You know, like you would have never thought that in Queen Street of the central business district of Auckland that you'd be mauled by a polar bear. In order to protect the climate, of course. They're just crazy. And there's one person, and they all tend to be socialist as well. I'm not trying to draw any conclusions here between socialist tyranny and New World Order tyranny. I think they're kind of the same thing, actually. Maybe I am drawing a conclusion, but one of the ladies asked me one time, you don't believe global warming's a fact? No, wait. She said climate change. She says, you don't believe in climate change. No, I believe in climate change. It's been changing for 4 billion years. You know, but you're a climate denier. No, I'm not. I never denied there was a climate.
Now, here's something funny, Vinny. You said that, and it triggered my memory because I wrote this article a while back, and, after 5,000 articles, I'm surprised I even remember any of this stuff. Al Gore has a website, Reality Drop. And on this website, you can go and test your troll skills on behalf of climate change. There are little tests you can take. There are little questionnaires so that you can better learn how to go into the comment thread and put your 2 cents into the comment thread, and also make anyone dissenting from your opinion look bad.
Well, suddenly it makes a hell of a lot of sense now, doesn't it? And I think this kind of thing's been going on for a long time. It's like whenever you're arguing the truth on any platform, and this is actually the reason why I kind of preach to the converted to a large extent, is because I really hate trying to argue with these trolls and scum. I just block them, That's the wonderful functions of Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and email and every other form of communication. You get these trolls coming at you. You're evil. You're a crazy right winger. The environment's in trouble. We need to quickly give up all our rights and carbon tax absolutely every form of human activity in order to save us. Block, and you never hear from the fracker again. And it's blessed, because this way, the only people you're talking to are the people who actually either A1, know the truth, or B2, want to know the truth. Isn't that fairly reasonable? I don't think I'm being completely unreasonable and being a bit of a douchebag by just not talking to people who are brainwashed, freaking mindless, insulting, self-obsessed, mouth-breathing, knuckle-dragging scum. I mean, what benefit is there to my life? If anything, it's going to shorten my life because it stresses me out because I don't like really being insulted all the time just for knowing what the hell is going on.
Well, absolutely. They want to dispel the myths that it's not happening, that it's not humanity that's causing it, that it's not a bad thing, and that it's not hard to change. But when you just think about the World Economic Forum. Bill Gates was up there talking about he's going to end poverty by 2035 if he can inoculate everybody in underdeveloped nations. Al Gore gets up on stage and says we can stop climate change in its tracks if we depopulate underdeveloped nations. after hearing those two, I look for correlations. Killing people, getting rid of people, ending climate change, ending poverty. That must be their real agenda. However they get there, that's up to us if we want to, participate in the tyranny, but that's their end game. They want to get rid of people, and if they get rid of people, it will end climate change and we won't have poverty anymore.
Yeah, because all the impoverished people will be dead, and then the rich scumbags like Al Gore and Bill Gates, who are incidentally telling everybody, "Oh, let's try and end poverty," while they live in their billion-dollar mansions that they don't even, and that they hardly even visit, but they leave the 1700 frickin' light bulbs going the whole time to make people think that they're home the whole time. Well, the reality is they buy waterfront property so that they can sit there and soak up the climate change rays.
Yes, and for those who are left behind, we will be using less resources because there will be less of us. And we will get to live in these wonderful smart cities. AT&T and IBM are designing the smart cities. They're going to integrate it into the internet and then create the huge Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything, where the parking spaces are smart. They are hooked up. Actually, Thomas Sheridan was telling me about this. It's crazy. In Dublin, they have these little sensors on all the parking spaces, including parallel parking. And then there's an app that is hooked up to this information. So what happens is, as soon as the spot becomes available, if you are on this application while you're driving, you can see in real time as the spots become available. You can even see statistical data that'll tell you when the best day and time to use that parking space is.
Big Brother's coming in strong, isn't he? And I remember having a talk with a cop about maybe 8 months ago or something like that, about 1984. He's asked, as all cops do, they ask you your name and your date of birth. And I was born in 1984. And little did I know that I'd actually lived the entirety of my life in 1984. And it would just become more like it as I grow up. And he was like, "Oh, well, it wasn't very accurate, was it? Because 1984 came and it wasn't exactly like that." Well, hold on a second. Are you telling me that endless war isn't happening? Well, endless war is happening. You name me a year that the United States hasn't been at war since World War II. Doesn't exist. Okay, so endless war is happening. Are you sure that there's no such thing as propaganda, right, going on? Well, you have a look at all of the articles that came out in the New Zealand media exposing our Prime Minister, John Key, who was incidentally a Federal Reserve banker for Merrill Lynch for 2 years in charge of the foreign bond and derivatives trade. Yeah. What caused the 2008 financial crash again? The bond and derivatives trade, wasn't it? With all that massive debt bubbles. And so naturally we elect somebody who created all of that crisis to come and save us from it. I'm going to save you from people like me. Right. All these articles come out in the media. One of these mainstream media journalists that I know, Jen de Montauk, told me, send me I must have been 10 or something. These are just the ones that she could find off the top of her head of mainstream media reporting that John Key, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, lied. Completely lied, utterly contradicted himself, etc. And then an article comes out, I think not a few days after she showed me all of those, because I was criticizing the media for not exposing John Key for being a liar, and she kind of proved me wrong there to a little bit. But here's the kicker. The next article that comes out is John Key, the most trusted and loved Prime Minister ever.
And there's no such thing as propaganda. You'll love this one. Here in the United States, Obama has a team that have put in a lot of money into the California Endowment, and they granted $500,000 to the Hollywood and Health Society so that they could rewrite scripts for television to encourage young Americans to enroll in Obamacare. Now, they're working with staff members, writers, producers, online resources, organizations dealing with subject matter to move in Obamacare as a great thing in your favorite television show, reality show, or completely produced sitcom. And this will be information in both Spanish and English to get people to sign on to a. But there's no such thing as propaganda, right, Vinny?
Well, yeah. See, and again, this goes back to that 1984. Truth is a lie, lies are the truth. Freedom is slavery, and slavery is freedom, and so on and so forth. We're living in an upside down, opposite world, aren't we? Almost every single thing. This is the reason why I've come up with my two main base assumptions in life. They're not 100% accurate, but if you can't be bothered doing your research on certain things or whatever, if you just follow these assumptions, they're generally correct. Number one, if it comes from an official source and that has an official line, it's probably the exact opposite of whatever they're telling you. And number two, if you can't make it in your kitchen, then it's probably a soft kill by a weapon. I think those are pretty standard assumptions that everybody can get along with.
Well, I had this, I was reading this article, it was so over the top. It was by the LA Times here. Climate change could spark a major increase in crime, study finds. Between the LA Times reporting that in this study that between...
Are they including that climate change trading before the trade things have already even started and financial manipulation based upon that trading? Do they count that as a crime?
Oh, it should be, because they're already doing all kinds of carbon swaps and stealing land left, right, and center all over the globe with this nonsense.
Oh, and by the way, Al Gore owns a climate change carbon tax scheme, Global Management LLC. They are the biggest on the stock market, and they're selling this stuff like it's hotcakes. So he's making a ton of money just by hawking all this crap.
Well, in this report, the ridiculous part is this is, they're looking into the future, JoJo's Climate Psychic Alliance or something. And between 2010 and 2099, climate change can be expected to cause an additional 22,000 murders, 180,000 cases of rape, 1.2 million aggravated assaults, 2.3 million simple assaults, 260,000 robberies, 1.3 million burglaries, 2.2 million cases of larceny, and 580,000 cases of vehicle theft. The study was published this week in the Journal of Environmental Economics and Management.
So what do you mean by vehicle theft? Are like people going to desperately steal a Prius?
Yeah, I don't know what it's
500,000 of them.
It doesn't make any sense. It goes.
Where did they get all these statistics from?
I know, and
serious.
Well, from the future, it says right at between 2010 and 2099, climate change can be expected to cause 180,000 cases of rape. So you're either with the rapists or you want a carbon tax, right? We gotta implement the carbon tax, or everyone's gonna get raped.
Yeah. It's like, pay your taxes, or there will be rape and murder and car theft and all sorts of other crimes committed. Well, hold on a second. Isn't taxing me without representation a crime? Yes, it is, but it's a preventative measure. What do you mean it's a preventative measure? Well, if we carbon tax everybody, all the food prices will go up, and a hell of a lot of people who would commit those crimes will just starve to death anyway, and there won't be any crime. See, it's a wonderful solution.
We're gonna eliminate poverty, crime. And
they're not trying to eliminate poverty. They're just trying to eliminate the people who are living in poverty.
Yeah, but that's how they're going to do it. And they're going to eliminate crime, too, because no one will be able to commit the crimes because we'll be starved to death. Yeah.
It's actually quite difficult to plan a heist if you're starving to death. I mean, you didn't see any Somalians during the early 1990s or late 80s and what have you, planning off Pink Panther jewel heist, did you? No, because they were friggin' starving to death.
2 years ago, last year, the Department of Defense, along with the University of Maryland, put together a study that said the threat of natural disasters because of climate change occurring on unprecedented scales could lead to disrupted migration, food and water shortages, and other public health crises, including civil unrest.
Oh, are they saying that civil unrest is a health crisis?
Yes, food and water shortages. It's cheaper to buy a 2 liter bottle of soda costs 99 cents, and a 2.5 ounce bottle of water costs $1.99. So I would say that they're controlling the shortages of our food and water.
Yeah. And incidentally, the sodas have sodium in them, which makes you real thirsty. So it'll actually, you'll drink the soda and then you'll get thirstier, and you can either A, drink more soda, which makes you even thirstier and makes you obese, or you can buy some water at like twice the price in order to quench the thirst of the drink that you just drank.
Oh, wait a minute. That's not. It has flame retardant. So in case you were thinking about spontaneously combusting, you won't if you drink soda. It has
Well, that's a relief.
it has caramel flavoring made with aborted fetus tissue. So if you're into that, you drink it up. It contains aspartame, which tricks your body into thinking that it has glucose, which is sugar, which is what your brain runs on. So you keep drinking more and more of it, thinking that your body's getting nutrients when it's really not. So there's a lot of wonderful, interesting things that soda does for you. I don't think it's healthy, but it's interesting what it does to your body.
And incidentally, again, refer back to Vinny's assumption. Can you make soda in that form in your kitchen? No, you can't. Ergo, soft kill bioweapon.
Absolutely. And at a low price, too. It's affordable.
Well, look, if you're going to kill people, you got to make it affordable. I mean, otherwise they'll just be like, "Oh man, it's too expensive to kill myself." Oh.
Exactly.
I mean, you'd cause a whole lot of climate change depression, based upon people not being able to kill themselves at the hands of Coca-Cola Corporation.
Right. If you want everyone's fingerprint, then sell them a cell phone at $300 a pop that they can go ahead and scan their own, so you don't have to worry about arresting everybody anymore. You've got their fingerprint. You just worry about arresting the people who didn't buy it.
Yeah. And you have a GPS tracker on that phone as well.
Right. If you want people to use RFID chips in their everyday life, you don't have to worry about injecting it into them. You put it in jewelry and pendants and rings and in watches, and you make them buy it $300, $400, $500 a pop. So not only are you making money, but you're assured that everybody is tracked and traced. Now, all you have to worry about are the guys who didn't buy it.
Or the dogs that didn't buy it, but apparently they a new microchip for dogs called RF Fido.
They do.
Now, see, and there's the other thing about being softened up for the blow kind of thing. The New World Order takes a really, very long, protracted approach. I mean, it wasn't like, Frack, what year did An Inconvenient Truth come out? It must have been over a decade ago, at least.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. And so far, climate change legislation has been held back on the global level to a degree, but every single country is very, very slowly implementing them. I think New Zealand might have been the first country to implement a carbon tax, but they didn't call it a carbon tax, of course, because everybody didn't like the idea of being taxed more for their climate sins. So they called it an emissions trading scheme. That sounds really... It sounds really nice and fluffy, doesn't it? Well, how does an emission trading scheme work? Well, they tax everything and give it to the bankers. But isn't that just a carbon tax? Well, yes, it is. But you called it an emissions trading scheme. Yes, we did. But it's the same thing as a carbon tax. I know. But...
Here we go. State Senator from California, Darrell Steinberg. He says, let's have the carbon tax placed into the gas prices. So if you want to use you want to use your car, you have 15 cents more per gallon increase that would skyrocket to 43 cents by 2030. So since everyone's going to have to use the Agenda 21 mass transit system or walk, or if you live in Surat, India, they actually tell you to go ahead and get a rickshaw and cart people around or get in the cart. So they're getting rid of people driving because they can't afford to, and they're paying carbon taxes for those who are. And then you've got Toyota and Nissan and Tesla and a couple of other corporations. Ford is one of them. They've got the driverless cars coming out next year. These are not concept cars. These are actually they're on the manufacturing line right now being built, and these cars can drive you around, so they don't have to worry about so many carbon credits. So they've got this whole thing covered, folks, from top to bottom. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, in New Zealand, part of the emissions trading scheme is to charge a minimum of 5% extra per litre of gas. Just clarify here. A minimum of 5% extra. Are you telling me that the petrol companies can actually charge a higher percentage of carbon taxes if they wanted to? Well, yes, they can. Wouldn't they just be able to raise that price regardless, tell us that it's carbon taxes, and then just keep the money because they're not actually required? Well, yes, they can. How unbelievable! And my late Auntie Vappy. She's not really my auntie, but that's just kind of what I call her because when I was a young activist, she always took me out and bought me food and gave me her son's hand-me-downs and things like that. And she died not too long ago. And she was virulently against this climate change neo-fascism agenda. And she just wanted to ask a simple question. Okay, she's a respected person in the in New Zealand, she got the ability to speak to Parliament, the whole of Parliament. Every single member of Parliament was there, and they all got to hear this question: where is the money from our carbon taxes and emission trading schemes going? That's right, dead silence. The whole freaking Parliament, not one elected representative had a clue where any of that money was going. What does that say?
It says that they're not involved. It's a need-to-know basis, and they were not. Their pay grade was too low. The money flows in, it flows to the appropriate places, and the only people who know about it are the ones who are making sure that it continues along its journey down the river.
Yeah. Well, we're all being sold down the river, aren't we?
Yes, we are. But we're not at fault. We have to remember that every time we say on Facebook that we're against GMO and then go to the store and buy it, that we're participating. We have to remember that when we're thirsty and we pick up a soda, instead of making some unfiltered, or filtered water rather, in your house and just carrying it around in a BPA-free container, that we're saying yes to the tyranny.
Yeah, well, and also there's the other element that you can't escape the tyranny entirely anyway, can you? All right. Even right now, we're using Skype, aren't we? Who owns Skype? Bill Gates. Who is the person who talked about depopulating the earth and pushes the climate change agenda and toxic vaccines to give to all those impoverished people so that the impoverished people will die, hence ending poverty? Bill Gates. They've got us frickin' stitched up. It's like we can't even resist them without supporting them anymore. That's the frustration for me. I don't know how to resist without being part of the system. It's just not possible. Because a new system has not yet been created that makes the existing one obsolete. Okay, there isn't a like the organic markets, for example. Organic food is as cheap as the GM foods yet, nor is widely used, and they'll probably get even more expensive as time goes on because with the constant aluminium layering of farmland and fertile soils and everything, it wouldn't even matter if you wanted to grow organic because nothing will grow at all, not even grass. So, they got us by the short and curlies here to a degree. And my philosophy is know the poison and drink it anyway. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Hey, and here's another thing. I had this realization last night. Or was it the night before last? I forget. But anyway, I came out and I was like wondering about the end of the world, right? Everybody's saying, the New World Order's going to end the world, or a comet's going to end the world, or a great massive Earth shift's going to end the world, or chemtrails are going to end the world, etc., etc. Friggin' everything's going to end the world as far as I'm concerned. So here's the thing. You know what caused 90% of all illness? Stress. That's right. So if you're sitting around stressing about the end of the world, you won't see the end of the world because you'll kill yourself with stress before it happens. So stop worrying about it. I don't know. I thought that was a pretty amusing realization to come to. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just being cynical.
Well, it's like what I said on your broadcast. Everyone's under the influence of one of four things: fear, rage, alcohol, or drugs, or any combination of those four. When you realize...
Incidentally, I was drinking alcohol at the time that I came up with that realization.
See? When you're under the influence, you're not in your right mind. And if you are making decisions based on your emotions, and that's a really, really slippery slope because emotions are sneaky, and you think you're justified because somebody wronged you, you think you're justified in your next action. Because we don't think about the consequences of what we're going to do. Not the consequences are all bad. Because Bill Gates, standing up in front of the World Economic Forum, talking to investors, he's taking a chance. That's a consequence he's putting out there. It might pan out. In fact, I bet it did monetarily for him because people made out checks, and now he's going to have a new vaccine program rolling around. But
so he turned the World Economic Forum into the World Economics for him.
Well, that's what the World Economic Forum is. And I think that's why it's underreported, even by a lot of alternative media, which shocks me because to me, that's bigger than Bilderberg. This is where all the CEOs and everyone in a state of power is a CEO, okay? Heads of state are CEOs. Obviously, the heads of corporations, all of these investors and venture capitalists, the people who fund all of the shenanigans that we see going on in the world, those guys go to the Economic Forum to sit down and listen to the other guys pitch them so that they know where to invest their money into the next scheme that's going to make them 5 or 6 times what their initial investment is. Now, to a lot of people, what I just said, they just went, I don't want to hear about that. I don't understand that. But the problem is, this is where the movers and shakers are. This is where the deals go down. This is where the handshakes go down. And then 2, 3, 6 months, 12 months later, this is where we see all of their schemes coming to fruition. Why? Because they were just funded.
Yeah, there's more movers and shakers there than a Parkinson's convention.
Exactly. So this is really important information. I wrote several articles this year on Davos because what they said was incredible. They've been talking along. Why do we see all this movement in natural gas? Well, it's because the UN said in 2012 that we need to move toward natural gas, stop funding the petrol companies, stop funding subsidies for Standard Oil. OPEC is really, really ticked off. Saudi Arabia is scrambling, trying to find out how much natural gas they actually have so they can still remain a contender, while they are funding all of these fake revolutions in countries that are movers and shakers, like, let's see, Russia, who has the untapped resources in Russia is what people should be concerned about, not what we know about, because most of that land is untouched and it's rife with all sorts of goodies that make lots of people lots and lots of money. So they don't want Russia to become a superpower, which they're poised to do economically, and as far as importing and exporting go, they can afford to stay there. Plus they have military might, which is getting pretty formidable. So you go ahead and you put in these fake revolutions all over the place and you control resources. What was going on in Egypt? Well, under Mubarak, Egypt had an agreement with Israel to 40% of their own natural gas stocks to Israel for pennies on the dollars, so to speak. They decided that was a bad deal. They wanted to take their bid to the global market and see if they could get more money for their resources. Israel said, you ain't doing that. Guess what? Fake revolution. Mohammed Morsi shows up and he gets hired to become the new patsy. But he did one thing that he was supposed to, no, he didn't do the one thing he was supposed to do, which was re-up that contract. He said, no, Egypt has lots of natural gas. We should sell it to the highest bidder. Guess what? He got fired. Now he's on trial. He's probably going to die.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order. A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founder.
Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games. We got everything you want. How do we know the names? We are the people that can find whatever you may need. If you got the money, honey, we got your disease. Jungle. Welcome to the jungle.
We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see. World order, world order, world order.
Welcome to Detroit City. I said welcome to Detroit City. Every place, everywhere we go. Where we team, everywhere we roll. Let's go.
We're back with Vinny Eastwood and Susanne Posel, and we've got Mark back on the line, our co-host. And you're listening to Angry Beaver Radio here on truthfrequencyradio.com. And we were talking about, I think we were talking about Mubarak and staged revolutions, and during the break we're talking a little bit about the Ukraine. And basically what's going on with all these globalists. We seem to be seeing globalists in all these different countries, the same, same names, same faces, the usual suspects, staging revolutions or trying to stir it up. They know when to strike when the iron's hot. They know when there is dissent in the country, and they know how to stir the pot. And I've seen these same groups like the Rockefellers, Tides Foundation, the same people in Canada doing the same thing here. And we've seen, cop cars being torched, whole departments being torched, just a few months ago. And also, there's also suspicion about the Lac Magnetique train derailment with all the oil on the trains. Massive explosion there.
And there seems to be oil nowadays. Almost everything, whether it be ships or whether it be, trains, it all is all oil for some reason lately. I don't know what's going on.
Well, I guess
Oil wells and ends well.
I guess what my point is what's going on in Ukraine is important. People who don't live in Ukraine may think, well, it's there. It's not going to happen here. Well, what I'm saying is these same people that are stirring the pot there to cause this are doing this kind of stuff here for other reasons and in America.
Yeah,
So-
and Americans have such little geographic knowledge in general, and they're so plugged into pop culture. They think that Ukraine is some kind of Russian version of YouTube.
Doesn't the Ukraine want to be independent? Are they with the European Union?
Well, should I get into this now?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
All right. So what's going on in the Ukraine is what's going on all over the Middle East, what's happened all over most of the countries, including, they tried this in Iran, if anybody remembers, under the former president, oh gosh, I can't remember his name.
Ahmadinejad.
Ahmadinejad, right. Ahmadinejad. So he came out and said, you're not going to start a fake revolution here in my country. He tried to say because of sanctions, because he wasn't complying with the UN and the United States and the sanctions being imposed on the country, that the people were up in arms. He said, no, you're not going to start one of these fake revolutions in my country. So what's going on in the Ukraine is the same thing that's happened all over the world. And before I get into the history of it, I want to point out that just yesterday, Christine Lagarde came out and said that she's going to be sending a team to respond in the coming days. It's an IMF fact-finding team to Kiev to undertake preliminary dialogue with authorities to see whether or not they're going to give that country the necessary money that they need to rebuild their infrastructure. Now, of course, the IMF and the World Bank come swooping in as soon as these fake revolutions start, because they are designed to not only topple the government, but to make sure that international bodies have control of resources. What are the resources in Ukraine? Well, we're talking about major import in Odessa for importing and exporting of natural gas and petrol out of Russia. And through the Black Sea, they can then attain the Mediterranean Sea, which would then give them the ability to push all of that natural gas and petrol out into the markets and service China and the European nations. Now, the European Union has wanted the Ukraine for a long time because they are one of these places that are the middleman in between one country and the rest of the world's markets. So it's strategically a good place for these international bodies to take over. Now, what they do, and here's the blueprint of what they do. In the early 90s, if anybody remembers, there was a group called Optor in Serbia. And Optor staged these nonviolent revolutions using a book From Dictatorship to Democracy, which is 189 ways to topple your government with nonviolent resistance. This book was written in the 1970s by Gene Sharp. And because of this book has kind of gone underground like the anarchist cookbook. If you're not in the know, you probably never heard of it. So in 1983, with all of the help that Gene Sharp has done simply by writing this book and it being used by the Serbians to topple their government, he has received lots of money and was able to start the Albert Einstein Institute, where he sits on his little chair with funding from the RAND Corporation and the Ford Foundation, as well as the National Endowment for Democracy, which is where most of this funding is coming from. Okay, folks? There's a lot of talk about is the U.S. funding it? Absolutely. U.S. tax dollars are funding all of these fake revolutions through National Endowment for Democracy. Now, the International Republican Institute, you probably haven't heard of them. Go look them up. One of their most famous members of the board of directors is Senator John McCain. If you remember, Senator John McCain made some sympathetic comments about the Free Syrian Army. The Free Syrian Army are a funded version of these fake revolutions. Now, this book,
no army is free because they all require funding.
Exactly. Well, yeah, it's got to come from somewhere, right, folks? That's what the World Economic Forum is for. So the International Republican Institute went into Serbia and did something interesting. They didn't infiltrate. They monitored and watched and took notes and spoke with the inner circle. Now, they were a nameless, faceless group, like most of these fake revolutions are, so it was a little bit difficult for them to gain trust so that they could get into the inner circle. But yes, there was a head and a group of maybe like a cabinet, you would call it, that made decisions and then disseminated information to the lower ends, and then you would have these revolutions start. Now, in Dictatorship to Democracy, Gene Sharp outlined that this book was a substitute for war and other nonviolent action. We've seen it used in Tunisia, in Syria, and in Egypt, and in Libya, and they tried to use it in Iran. They use color schemes, yellow, green, red. It's one of the hallmarks of Gene Sharp's recommendations. They use the icon of the fist, or the peace sign, as a sign of communication between the members of the revolution. They also use slogans like, quote, "People's demand removal regime, this my vote counts, selection, not election, where's my vote?" And they put these up on posters and they carry them around in demonstrations. They use chains in order to convey civil disobedience and is often used during the protests. They hand flowers to their oppressors. They use mirrors in order to reflect back to the police officers who are standing in the way. They also use strategic planning. Now, it's not that way now, but it was back in the early 90s, where people still had some semblance of what chivalry is, and so they would organize these protests in such a way that the women and children and elderly would be in front, because the police were less likely to hit a child or an elderly or a woman than he would a man. A man standing up in front of a man, if you're not 4 feet away, you are a possible threat to the other man. So there's obviously a tension that's just inherent to two men standing in front of each other. They used methods like mock funerals and boycotts. They would walk down the street at 6 o'clock during the 6 o'clock news or during the broadcast when the president was on, and they would smack their pots and pans loud enough in large groups down every street so people could hear it and would be turned away from the television and paying attention to them. Now, all of these nonviolent resistance methods that I pointed out, they are not bad inherently. The book itself is not bad. It's what it's been used for, which is the terrible thing. Because the International Republican Institute took this information and took notes and has used this as a blueprint all across the world. Now, here in the United States, we have the American Spring, Operation American Spring, and it concerns me a great deal because it has all of the hallmarks of a manufactured revolution. And when people come to me asking me about when is police going to happen, when is martial law going to happen, when are they going to lock down the country, when are they going to use the FEMA camps, I've come to realize that there's an interesting point to this. When they use these fake revolutions, what they're doing is they're selling a product. It's marketing. And the product that they're selling is freedom. Now, you can't argue with freedom, otherwise you would be a jerk. Everyone wants to be free. But when you ask someone, what does freedom mean to you? Most of the time they say, well, I'm not in jail. I can go wherever I want. I can just jump in the car and go to the store. I saw a little picture today on Facebook said, I'm free. I've got the permits and the licenses to prove it. Well, isn't that funny? Because that's how we think. Now, when we have our freedoms taken away from us, we think that somebody else is in charge of whether or not we're free. Once they have that thought implanted in our mind, in a social consciousness, which then becomes multi-generational, it becomes a mutation in the evolution. People think that freedom equates things that you are privileges, permissions that you get from your government or your local government that say, yes, you have a driver's license, you can drive this car. Yes, you have a license, you can fish this river. Freedom is driving your car. Freedom is fishing in a river. It has nothing to do with permits and licenses. Registration means that you are handing over something to someone else. Applications are a way of disavowing your ownership of that thing. That's why when you go to the DMV, you fill out the application, you're disavowing your car, you give it to the DMV, and the DMV then gives you a card and says, yes, you have permission to drive it. You have 2 years to drive it, and then in 2 years or 4 years or 1 year, you have to come back and get your license renewed, and we're going to test you again to make sure that you know our compliance rules, and if you do, then we'll give you permission again for another 1 to 4 years, depending on your state. So getting back to these fake revolutions, we know that we are inherently free, and that when people place restrictions on us as a whole, as a society, unless they are applied to all of us equally, that we've all chosen that these are the rules and regulations that we're going to abide by, then our freedom is at a threat. It is being taken from us. Once we are in that emotional state, we are rife for the pitch, for the marketing. Now, the marketing comes when you are disenfranchised. Everyone's lost their home, or most of us have. Everyone has lost their job and their purchasing power, or most of us have. And so if we're not directly affected by it, we know people who are, and so we're indirectly affected by it. We all feel the tension. Like Vinny said, stress is the #1 killer and the manifestation of diseases in our bodies. So mentally, we're just wrung out. We're ready for something else, and we just want it, but we're not motivated to do it ourselves. We have this complex in our society, and I don't know if it's indicative just to America. I think it's probably on a global scale, that we think that something or someone is going to come and save us. And so when they are marketing this product called freedom, they have the savior already built into it. It's these organizers of these groups who are going to come and save you. And if you only do these things that they tell you to do, you will be free. Except the marketing stops at the revolution, because that's the only product that they're selling. See, on the other side of that revolution, when it comes to these other countries, is the same thing over and over again. They have the revolution. The day after, they install stability operations. You want to know where your police state is, and you want to know where your martial law is? That's the day after the revolution. These organizations that are working with the International Republican Institute and the Department of Defense and the CIA install stability operations with Blackwater and DynCorp. And they go in there and stabilize the population, which means they put guns in people's faces and say, you either comply with how we are bringing democracy to your country, or you're going to die. You choose. So obviously, people who don't want to die are going to say, "Okay, sir, would you like a cup of coffee? Maybe a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? How can I make you more comfortable? Don't kill me." Next comes the Patsy or the Transitional Council. We've seen the Patsies in Tunisia and we've seen the Patsies in Egypt. We've seen the Transitional Councils in Libya, and they have a Transitional Council waiting in the wings in Syria. It's called the Syrian National Council, and they are an elected group by the U.S. State Department under Hillary Clinton and members of the United Nations. And they are, by the way, just to give you a little hint, the National Transitional Council in Libya, who took over, it was a group of known terrorists, but because they have a seat at the UN, I guess they're legitimate. So that's what we have to look forward to. This product called freedom, which is only focusing on the revolution, recruiting the public, because obviously all of us want our freedom back. We think that somebody took something from us. We don't realize that we have our own power, and we are very powerful, because they wouldn't go through all of this marketing, and they wouldn't go through all of this sale, and they wouldn't go through all of this if it wasn't so that they could maintain the idea in our minds that we have to ask them permission for the things that we already have. And that's what's going on in these fake revolutions. It's very, very disheartening to me that people are falling for it, but I understand it. I feel disenfranchised too. But on the other side of these manufactured, and they are completely manufactured. People go in, they caught Victoria Nuland, who works for the State Department. They caught her on a phone call being taped, or I'm sorry, in a meeting. She didn't realize she was being taped. And this information leaked out, and so people reported on it, and it made people upset and it made people angry at the government. And even though I don't doubt that she said that at all, when you look at it from the marketing standpoint of selling people this fake revolutions, it's just fuel to the fire. We know that they are doing these things. There are things they are absolutely doing. There's some conjecture going on out there, but there are absolutely 100% factual things that we know they are doing to us. And those things that we can factually prove are beyond egregious. So the theories and the conjecture just muddy up the waters and make it confusing. When we are in that emotional state, when we are confused about what's going on in our world and how it works and who's doing it, and since we are taught and trained from day one that there's a bad guy because there's a bad thing happening, so there's got to be a bad guy, which means there's got to be a focal point, which means if we release that focal point or we remove the focal point, then we can get rid of the problem. That is the mistake. This is a hydra. This is a multifaceted problem. It deserves a multifaceted solution. But grabbing your pitchforks, like some of them did in the populist movement in other countries just a couple of months ago, grabbed their pitchforks and their fire and went and stormed parliament in Italy, I believe it was. You can't expect that to change anything. It's not going to, because the people who are in charge of that protest are the Defense Department, the State Department, the National Institute. It can't go the way that you think it's going to go because those are the people who are controlling it.
Right. Now we've seen this. I've noticed it happening in America with, we call controlled opposition. It's rampant throughout Canada, particularly in the environmental groups in Canada, is really the big one where the Rockefeller and the Tides Foundation, Forbes Foundation are all funding. And they're the only real violent ones. Some of the other protest groups are infiltrated, but they haven't really gotten violent. But I was wondering, Vinny, do you notice any of this same type of stuff going on in like New Zealand or Australia?
Oh, it's the same kettle of fish. Every day is just the same thing. I think what's occurred to me speaking with Americans and Canadians and people from the UK is that they all talk about New Zealand as if they don't understand it, as if it's different from the situation that they're in. It's no different. You got fluoride in the water, we got fluoride in the water. You got fomented BS revolutions and corrupt politicians, we've got those too. You got chemtrails, we got chemtrails. It's the same stuff, different accent.
Right, there's no real escape the new world order.
Well, I mean, think about the term New World Order. Name me a country do you think is exempt from that definition?
Now maybe the moon. I don't know. Antarctica.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think so. Incidentally, New Zealand's the one of the only places in the world where you get probably the largest quantity of access in terms of a jump point to Antarctica, which is why the US military is very, very interested in our country. Did Operation Katapo. Now, Katapo's a really nasty spider here in New Zealand, incidentally, and it was the largest US troop movement in New Zealand since World War II. And we haven't had this many US troops in our country before. And what the operation was doing was practicing beach landings and things of this nature under the guise of training to remove a prime minister from New Zealand. You heard that correctly. The US military is training with New Zealand troops, practicing to remove a prime minister of New Zealand, just in case. Doesn't that strike anybody as just a little bit scary?
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. That is exactly what I'm saying. Look, it's cheaper to do it this way. You get the entire country to, or at least a large sect of the country, to fight your fight for you, so you don't have to hire soldiers and you don't have to pay all of that money out. And then you have the people right where you want them because they think that they've won. So that when you introduce the new Patsy or the new transitional council, everybody is, yes, let's do that. I like that guy. Let's do that. And it's worse than they were off before.
Like I have friends, excuse me there, I have friends from Egypt, and a lot of them are saying to me that they like the President Morsi. Most of them were in favor of Morsi, but other countries are demonizing these presidents, prime ministers, and you kind of wonder what's going on. If the people support them, then, why is the U.S. butting in and just...
Well, Mohammed Morsi is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. So no offense to anyone that you're speaking to, but it might be a pertinent question to ask them where they stand with the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood is a very scary organization. They were founded in 1928, and they've been a kind of like an Al-Qaeda for elite organizations to use all over the Middle East for a very long time. You might want to research that.
Yeah, and especially tell your children about it so that they know about it too, so that both of you don't get taken for a little Morsi ride.
And, well, I'm getting this information from all sides, it not being as bad as what people are portraying them as. These living in...
Dude, you're breaking up pretty badly there. You're breaking almost as bad as a Hollywood couple.
Yeah, you're breaking up pretty bad there, Mark. But yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, to me, it's just one globalist stooge, and then they just implanted another globalist stooge when they were done, wiping their butt with the last one.
Yeah, these guys are hired to do a job. If they don't do their job correctly, we went into Nicaragua and took out Noriega, and we installed Castro because we didn't like Batista, and we've done this all over through the Middle East. It's the same thing. The only twist to this is they realized with the Serbians that they could take a blueprint and use it over and over again, because if someone comes to you and says, "Do you want to be free?" you say yes. Automatically, you're implying that you're not free. So now that they have you in agreement, they're going to tell you how you're not free. And then they're going to tell you the one thing you can do to get your freedom back. And it has to be participating in this manufactured revolution. So that is a sales pitch that everyone will fall for. And it has no bearing on someone's intelligence level. It's emotional. See, what they're doing is they're touching that deep emotional core inside you, that need to exist. And if someone challenges that need to justify your existence. So since we're all here and we all breathe and we exist, then the only other thing to do is to justify our existence if someone says that we shouldn't. And that is a base psychological need in all of us, that when they touch that, the other person will just immediately put up a wall, filter out all information, look for information to validate their belief because now they have a belief system, and then participate in things that if they were in their right mind, if they weren't under the influence of fear, rage, alcohol, or drugs, or any combination of the four, they would make good decisions for themselves that would benefit their lives instead of strapping them into an alternate universe of tyranny.
Well, I think if you're going to have a successful tyranny, you need to ensure that you have catch nets to catch people who get, shall we say, disillusioned. And that's the thing. They'll be like, oh, there's this tyranny over here. No, I don't like that one. And there's another tyranny over here that says that it's in opposition to that other one. So I'll be in favor of that. And then when you get disillusioned with that one, they've got an alternative tyranny for you to back up to. You know, it's just a shell game. It's like Russian dolls, or in this case, Ukrainian.
Oh, you say tyranny catch nets. I thought you were referring to the catch nets at the side of the iPhone factories.
That was Foxconn.
Foxconn, yeah, the suicide nets.
Absolutely.
That's a good tyranny catch net.
You know,
Yeah.
Google just bought Foxconn.
Google bought Foxconn, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess that must be part of their "Don't Be Evil" campaign.
It's an interesting acquisition.
And again, the Vinny Eastwood assumption: if they have an official line, it's the direct opposite. Don't be evil. Okay, that's just get rid of the word "don't" in there. Just be evil.
They have found the perfect way to make us fall for whatever they have in store for us. Because we all agree that the food is poisoned, the air is poisoned, our job market's in the toilet, our economy is there as well. There's no end in sight. Obama's starting these manufacturing hubs all over the country because he wants to turn our illustrious country into a nation of workers. He's got an initiative in the school system from K-12, including education, where they're going to assess your skill level and they're going to train you to be a worker from that day forward. And if you go to any higher education, it'll be a tech college or a 2-year degree where you can become a slave and work on some sort of assembly line. And so how are they going to get good people who are wonderful, smart entrepreneurs, people who want to have their own business? How are they going to get them to become slave workers? They're going to convince them that that is freedom. It's just like the Deltas in Brave New World. They were happy to be Deltas. Why? Because they were happy to be part of the machine that made life easier for the upper echelon.
It'd be nice. It'd be nice if freedom was real, or rather, if there was people out there promoting actual, real freedom. Don't you think? Like, wouldn't that be a nice change? A part of the frustration, the reason why many people in this, alleged truth movement get depressed and get angry and what have you, is because they're just sick of being lied to. And they get lied to so much about so many things that it becomes so difficult to see the truth, even if you're looking for it. And I think that's part of the source of the frustration, why a lot of people give up and stop listening and stop. And here's the thing. Actually, you know what's more important than listening to radio shows like mine? Is actually going out there and doing something about it. All right? I've said on my show many times, I would rather my show get 0 listenership tomorrow and have all of those people who were listeners to my show start up their own show, or all of those listeners go out with a camera and ambush a local politician who's committing some form of scumbaggery. I would actually prefer that. I prefer to be in the cold, homeless and jobless and have nothing to do with my life, so long as all of those people who were listening stopped listening and started doing something about it instead. But I'm not sure if that's going to happen. But there's no reason to say that listening's a bad thing in a necessary way. But still, it doesn't change my preference.
I think what needs to happen is we need to wake up. And those of you who think you're awake, I want you to try something. Just try it. If it doesn't work, go back to the way you were doing things before. When you hear something in the news or someone says something or you watch something and you have an emotional reaction to it, stop, think, and choose a course of action. If you stop and think for a minute or a night, don't let anyone tell you got to make a decision right away. Sleep on it. There's a reason why people used to do that. It's because if you make a decision based on an emotion, those are the decisions you regret. Those are the decisions that caused you more harm when you were just trying to find a good, decent path to get to where you were going. So since our end game is freedom, then if something comes along that riles up our emotions, and it is designed to get us to agree with it and become part of it the moment we hear about it, let's just sit back and think about it for a minute. Do some research. Look into it. Find out who is involved. Find out who they are involved with. And have the wherewithal, self-esteem to not follow the crowd and to do what's right for you. And if the answer is no, be brave enough to say no. You might be right about it.
Right, it sure beats, like I know there's definitely lots of Canadians here that are probably have the best, thoughts in mind in terms of protecting the environment, but have gotten involved with some organizations that are actually promoting violence and destruction of property, and also causing harm to other individuals, and they already have. And but the sad part is some of these supposed activists, well, many of them are not paid. They got sucked into the propaganda and don't realize they're, globalist funded, globalist run. And that's just one of many activist groups. If you look into all the different protest groups and various activist groups around the world throughout history, I mean, it's hard to find one that wasn't infiltrated or hijacked or steered one way or another to steer the people off a cliff using their political will against
this
them.
This is a different tactic. And I'm not saying this at all that you're implying that it was infiltrated. This is not infiltration. And I'm saying this more for your audience than for you, because I know you, John, and you're right on the ball. You know what you're talking about. This is absolute manufacturing. None of it was ever real. None of it. The part about 1984 that most people gloss over and never talk about is when Winston Smith learned that the revolution was never real and the head of the revolution was made up. That is what we're dealing with. That is it's so insidious. It's that disgusting. It's that they have taken our desire for freedom and said, hey, wait a minute. Now, we can't stop them from figuring out that we're putting all this garbage in their food and their water. We can't stop them from figuring out that the money's fake and that it's all a ruse. What do? Hey, I got a great idea. Let's take that and use it to our benefit. And that's what they've done. These are corporate CEOs. These guys Bill Gates does not become Bill Gates without having a knowledge of how to manipulate, how to control people through words and through certain actions.
Hey, how do you get Australians to buy into a ruse? Wait, hold on a second. I've completely messed that one up. What do you call a ruse that works on Australians? Kangaroos.
These are not real. These revolutions are not real. It is part of a process. It is a new U.S. foreign policy process where they send in agitators to rally up people who are just waiting for someone to come along, who know people, who can be talked into it. And when they get enough people together, they go and they topple the government and force those people out of office. Then what happens is the new guy all of a sudden shows up and everybody loves him. The heads of these groups who have now brought that person, the first president down, loves the new guy, and the new guy gets in. Look, right now there's factions in Ukraine talking about the EU. The Ukraine. Why would the EU want to be part of the Ukraine? Why would the EU want to be part of the technocratic revolution? They have not been part of it all this time, and they've been fine. If they are under the thumb of the technocrats, then everything that belongs to Ukraine belongs to the IMF and the World Bank. That's what it means to join the EU. You give up all sovereignty. The guy who's sitting there as president or the leader, he's taking orders. He's just doing what he's told to do. And he's better at that job than the previous guy, which is why they have to get him out. The whole thing is absolutely fake. And the problem is that it is the most real show we've ever seen. It's a new product. Just like they've used technology to get better at surveying people, they've used our minds and studying our psychology for all these decades, using the pharmaceutical companies to figure out how our brains work and which chemicals, when released in our brains, the receptors that receive it and how it works, that they know, using neurolinguistic programming, they know what to say, how to say it, and the worst part about it is they get you to finish their sentences. They give you a slogan, and I mentioned this on Vinny's show, so Vinny is probably bored of this. An idea whose time has come. What idea? Whose idea? Where did the idea come from? Nobody knows. It's a slogan. It's a catchphrase. It is designed to get you, the listener, to finish that slogan, to finish their sentence. And what's most important, folks, is not what the guy says to you. It's what you say to yourself after you're finished listening to him. Because that conversation that you have in your head defines what your next action is going to be. And if you are emotionally charged and under the spell of the words of the presenter, then you're going to fall for whatever he said, and you're going to finish his sentence in the right way. As soon as he comes around with the rest of his sales pitch, bam, he's got you. And there's nothing you can do. And the best part about it is you thought that it was your idea. You thought that you came up with it. And so by there, the salesman is completely... He's not a bad person. He's just the help. He's just the facilitator. He helped you figure out this grand idea for yourself when really the whole thing is manufactured. It's unlike any other scheme we've ever seen before.
Well, I know we are probably running close to the end of our time. Vinny, you got any closing thoughts? And shout out your website and when people can tune in.
Okay. Closing thoughts. Number one, there's no one solution. There's no one size fits all kind of solution to this problem. I evidence this by asking people to think honestly. What ways is the New World Order currently screwing you? Every way, wouldn't you say? Therefore, any way that you resist their agenda is the right way to go about it. You can do anything at all, except nothing. Don't do nothing. That's the problem. You got to inspire people. You got to motivate them to get out there. Okay, take me for example. By myself, to the large part. I acknowledge all the support that I've been given over the years by people who've helped to produce my show on occasion, and all of course the listeners who fund my operation through their generous donations. But that aside, by myself, I have created a YouTube channel that ranks the main media in New Zealand. And I have provided a platform where activists, for free, they don't have to give me any money whatsoever, they don't have to support me in any way, shape, or form. I will provide a platform for them regardless, so that they can talk at length about the issues that they're discussing. The reason why it's at length and the long form interviews is because specifically of the fact that sound bites do not give you enough information to satiate your hunger for the truth. You understand, don't you, ladies and gentlemen? This is an important job. I'm doing it as hardcore as I can. I'm tired, I'm stressed, I'm depressed, because of my current financial situation. We just moved into a bigger house so that we could expand the operation, but there's just been all these bills and problems, and we just got married and came back from Christmas, all of that kind of stuff. I really need some help. ladies and gentlemen. I really need some support. So go to thevinnyeastwoodshow.com, and if you would be generous enough to start up an automatic payment, just a few dollars a month, whether that be $5 or even $1 itself a month, just show me some support, because of the fact that I'm not gonna pay you back. In most cases, I don't even have the time to thank all of these generous people who give of themselves to help me support what I'm doing. I can't pay you back for that. I can't even express the amount of gratitude that I have. I can, however, pay it forward. I can and do make sure that all of these people who normally get ignored by mainstream media, and if they're not ignored by mainstream media, they get given minimal coverage of a few minutes with a douchebag radio show host that interrupts them every few seconds on only a few minute interview. That's not fair. These people get their lives in some cases. They give their comfort and security up so that they can try and save this country from tyranny, so that this information, when it goes out there, can help save this world from tyranny. The only way that tyranny can exist is if people are not aware that it's even there. It's like the greatest trick the devil even pulled is making sure that people don't believe he even exists. So this is the part that I need to stress to people. One man can make a difference. One woman can make a difference. If you are not prepared to go out and make that difference by yourself, regardless of the level of support that you're getting, just to start it, okay? Don't ask for help. That's the biggest mistake anybody ever makes when they want to go out and start doing something right by humanity. The first thing that they do is ask somebody to help. You know, can you help me figure out how to do YouTube? Can you help me figure out a radio show? You don't need any help to begin. That's what I discovered. You don't need help to begin. Once you begin, on the other hand, after a while, you will realize very shortly, as soon as I did, that you need help to continue, right? So I want to encourage people to do one of two things. Begin to do something to expose the tyranny, or help somebody who is being effective at doing it. Help people who are helping others in your stead, okay? Everybody contributes in their own way. It takes 7 people to tell you the same thing before you start to get it, ladies and gentlemen. All you got to do then is not think that you're the one person who's going to wake this a slave a mentality person. You won't be the person to wake that up. Just say something. Don't do nothing, and just pray and hope and believe that there will be 6 other people that person will talk to over the course of their life that will tell them the same thing that you did and wake them up. Play your part, ladies and gentlemen. Play your part. And go to thevinnyeastwoodshow.com and please help me. I desperately need people's support right now. Susanne?
Well, my website is occupycorporatism.com. I have started a news agency. Phase 1 is the online newspaper, which is the USindependent.com, and I'm proud to say that the Angry Beaver and Vinny Eastwood and John and everything that you, both of you wonderful gentlemen, do makes the U.S. Independent the wonderful online newspaper that it is, because it's good sourced information from real good people, experts, radio broadcasters, attorneys, medical doctors, giving you good information. Because if we have good information, we will finally be able to make good decisions that will stop the New World Order directly in its tracks. So please visit those 2 websites, and thank you so much for having me on your show.
Well, I think we're just about out of time, so with that, I'll say goodnight to everybody, and tune in next Saturday at 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, noon Mountain.
Hi, I'm Janet Napolitano, Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Homeland Security begins with hometown security. That's why I'm pleased that Walmart is helping to make our communities more safe and secure. If you see something suspicious in the parking lot or in the store, say something immediately. Report suspicious activity to your local police or sheriff. If you need help, ask a Walmart manager for assistance. Thank you for doing your part to help keep our hometowns safe.